Welcome in to News and Views with Tom Lamprecht. The stories you've heard and the ones you need to hear.
Trees falling on homes, trees falling on power lines.
It's more out of control than I thought, and I can't believe that California is going to just let the jewel just burn up.
To think that we have left Americans who want to come home behind.
Anyone who says that there aren't people stranded is wrong.
The trust is completely broken.
And they simply were not a priority at the end.
Your life, your values, your voice. This is News and Views with Tom Lamprecht on Talk 96.3 and 103.7.
All right, welcome in. It is Tuesday, and the Afghanistan debacle continues. I was listening to Biden. Does he think he's Barack Obama? I mean, he showed up 40 minutes late again today. Now, I'm not saying that Donald Trump was absolutely on time every time, but he wasn't late every time. And he wasn't, if he was late, he was 5, 10, 15 minutes late. I mean, this guy's 60 minutes late sometimes. Today was about 40 minutes. Joe Biden is sickening. Biden, in a defiant address to the nation today, says while he takes responsibility for the decision to withdraw all U.S. troops from Afghanistan, it was basically Donald Trump's fault. I mean, he continues the same narrative that we've talked about over and over again. I mean, when it is this is right out of the Obama playbook, right? Blame George Bush for all your problems. So if it's a good situation, he'll take credit for it. If it's something that he wants to conveniently use to blame Donald Trump, that he was bound by Donald Trump's decision. He had to do it because Donald Trump set it up. Now, he doesn't follow anything else that Donald Trump has done, but when it comes to Afghanistan, that's a nice way to blame Trump. But again, Trump, I mean, I've said this 100 times, Trump's withdrawal had certain caveats that the Taliban had to meet, and they weren't meeting them. He wouldn't have withdrawn. But nonetheless, Biden blamed Trump this afternoon and blamed the Afghan security forces. He says he takes responsibility, but at the same time, he just says this was done with excellence. This is extraordinary. The president from the White House earlier today addressed the nation just a day after the last U.S. troops left Afghanistan. The president touted one of the biggest airlifts in history, noting that more than 120,000 individuals were airlifted to safety from Kabul. We don't know. It is really sad that we cannot trust anything that comes out of the White House or this administration. The president touted one of the biggest airlifts in history, calling the mission an extraordinary success. Only the U.S. had the capacity, the will, the ability to do it, and we did it today, Biden said, applauding the bravery and selfless courage of U.S. military, diplomats, and intelligence professionals. There are no intelligent professionals. My fellow Americans, the war in Afghanistan is now over. But you know what? The war in Afghanistan is not over. I mean, we withdrew from it, but it's not over. The Daily Wire is reporting that Biden turned his back on reporters following the speech. Biden's refusal to take questions from reporters after once again being very late to his own press conference. And blaming Trump and blaming Afghan, but not blaming himself. Takes full responsibility, but hey, this was just extraordinary. An extraordinary success. You know, if you really want to know what people think, we talked about Biden yesterday looking at his watch when he was at the Dover Air Force Base. What we didn't hear about was some of the other comments from family members. According to Mark Schmitz, the father of 20-year-old Jared Schmitz, who was murdered in the attack, and this is through the Washington Post, as the family started entering the bus to leave, the woman screamed in Biden's direction, "I hope you burn in hell. That was my brother." Schmitz said of the meeting with Biden when he just kept talking about his son. What he's saying is Joe Biden kept talking about Beau Biden so much. It was just my interest was lost in that. I was more focused on my own son than what happened with him and his son. And look, I'm not trying to take anything away from the heartbreak of losing your son, Mr. President, but that was several years back. These people, they're still in a dream-like state. They're still in unbelief. They're still totally numb that they've lost their child, they've lost their brother. And you being the narcissist individual that you are, quit talking about your son. Yes, it's sad that you lost a son. Maybe, okay, you're trying to relate to him, but right now they don't want to hear that. Royce McCullum, who lost her brother Riley in the attack, told the Post of Biden, he cannot possibly understand my dad, and I did not want to speak to him. You cannot kneel on our flag and pretend you care about our troops. You can't up as bad as he did and say you're sorry. This did not need to happen. It did not need to happen. And again, we get more stories every day that come leaking out. And listen, these are not from right-wing extremist publications, which most right-wing publications aren't extremist. I think they're pretty much middle of the road. It's the left-wing publications that are extremist. And I would include in that the Washington Post. And yet, the Washington Post today is reporting, now this is unbelievable, that the United States reportedly turned down an offer from the Taliban to take over control of Kabul while evacuating thousands of personnel, citizens, and green card holders. The Taliban offered to let, this is again from the Washington Post, the Taliban offered to let the United States take over Kabul while the terror group would remain outside waiting on President Joe Biden's self-imposed withdrawal deadline of August the 31st for the United States. The United States, however, turned down the offer, giving Kabul over to the Taliban while retaining control of the Karzai airport. Again, from the Washington Post. As the Taliban surrounded the city in mid-August, then Afghan President Ghani secretly flew out of the city with millions of dollars in duffel bags, by the way, leaving behind members of his own cabinet and the government and surprising Afghan and American officials alike. In the president's absence, the city governance collapsed, and the U.S. and the Taliban entered an unusual face-to-face negotiations about the city's future. In a hastily arranged in-person meeting, senior U.S. military leaders in Doha, including McKenzie, the commander of the U.S. Central Command, spoke with Abdul Ghani Baradar, head of Taliban's political wing. We have a problem, Baradar said, according to the U.S. official. We have two options to deal with. You, the United States military, take responsibility for securing Kabul, or you have to allow us to do it, meaning the Taliban. Throughout the day, Biden had remained resolute in his decision to withdraw all American troops from Afghanistan. The collapse of Afghan government hadn't changed his mind. McKenzie, aware of those orders, told Baradar that the U.S. mission was only to evacuate American citizens, Afghan allies, and others at risk. The United States, he told Baradar, needed the airport to do that. On the spot, an understanding was reached, according to two other U.S. officials. The United States could have the airport until August the 31st, but the Taliban would control the city. Unbelievable. This is unbelievable. And again, I've got to go back. I know there are many conservatives that are blaming this on incompetence. It's a stretch to me to say this is strictly on incompetence. Now, I think they're incompetent because they believe in socialism, communism, which is proven to be a failure around the world. So in that sense, they're incompetent, but I think this is by design. How do you leave $85 million worth of material, military equipment out there? And oops. I mean, you forget your cell phone on the kitchen counter, but when you go to work, that's an oops. When you leave $85 billion worth of military equipment behind for the enemy to take over, that's not an oops. About 24 House Republicans took to the House floor today to put heat on Pelosi and Democrats over the botched Afghan pullout. They demanded that the House pass by unanimous consent a bill sponsored by Mike Gallagher from Wisconsin to require the Biden administration to come up with a plan to bring home the Americans that stranded in Afghanistan. They got nowhere in that effort. I mean, basically, Nancy Pelosi, Debbie Dingell, the widow of the former Representative Dingell. You know, you have to control the people, Dingell. She immediately gavelled down the House so Republicans couldn't bring forward their bill. I mean, basically, there are a lot of Democrats that are agreeing with the Republicans. We want the Biden administration to come up with a plan to bring home the Americans. What's your plan? That's all they asked for. They weren't being dictatorial. They were saying, Mr. President, you say you're going to get everybody home. Could we see your plan? That's all they asked for. Nancy Pelosi, nope. So Kevin McCarthy and a number of conservative Republicans who were veterans got together for a press conference earlier today. Brian Mast, this is cut one, Clark. Brian Mast of Florida, who is a veteran, also took aim at the Biden administration. He had some rather pointed words for Joe and his administration.
As every veteran will tell you, the most important thing you bring into battle is why. The why for this battle that we're talking about today is very simple: to protect lives, to save Americans, and very pointedly this: every American, every one of us in this room, everybody in government is being lied to. When they send somebody out to the podium, when they send Blinken out to the podium, it's to lie to the American people. Flat out. When he says the terrorists promise that they won't let other terrorists in, that's an example of him lying to the American people. When they send somebody else out from the administration to talk about what's going to happen with the recognition of the Taliban or other terrorist groups, they're sending somebody out to lie to the American people. When they send somebody out to talk about the U.S. arms that will be used against our military, other militaries, and civilians across the globe, they're sending somebody out to lie to the American people. That is why what Representative Gallagher and every veteran up here and every member of our body is acknowledging.
These guys are lying up one side and down the other. There are Democrats, that's how bad it's gotten. There are Democrats that are agreeing with the Republicans. I mean, leave it to Biden. He's finally gotten some bipartisanship, and as did Senate Armed Services Committee Chairman Jack Reed, both Democrats.